The coffee was still warm in my hands when I watched them destroy him. It was December 23rd, 3 days before Christmas. The cafe was decorated with silver bells and evergreen garlands that hung from the ceiling like frozen tears. Soft jazz played through hidden speakers, but it couldn't drown out what was happening at the counter. "You're 8 minutes late, Daniel. 8 minutes." The manager's voice cut through the holiday cheer like a knife through wrapping paper. His name was Robert Hale, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper cruelty. The kind of man who mistakes authority for competence. Daniel Moore stood there, rain still dripping from his coat, his work shoes leaving wet prints on the floor I'd paid to install 5 years ago. He was 36 years old, though the lines around his eyes made him look older. Single father, night school student. The kind of man who says, "Yes, sir," even when he shouldn't have to. "Sir, I'm so sorry. There was an accident on Highway 9, and my daughter—" "I don't care about your daughter." The cafe went silent. I was sitting in the corner booth, the one with the torn leather I'd been meaning to replace. Nobody looked at me. Nobody ever did. I was just another woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on my nose, scrolling through my phone like every other invisible grandmother in America. But I wasn't reading news articles. I was reading Daniel Moore's employee file, 3 years of perfect attendance, 6 customer service awards, 2 written commendations for going above and beyond. And now, in front of 20 strangers and 4 coworkers, he was being gutted like a fish. "This is the problem with people like you," Robert continued, his voice rising with performative authority. "You always have an excuse. Your daughter, your car, your life. You know what I had to do this morning? I had to open this store myself because you couldn't be bothered to show up on time." 8 minutes. He was being crucified for 8 minutes. I watched Daniel's hands tremble, not from fear, from the effort it took not to speak, not to defend himself, not to tell Robert Hale exactly what kind of man he was. Because Daniel had a 7-year-old daughter at home. Because he had rent due on the 1st. Because men like Daniel Moore swallow their pride every single day just to survive. "You're done," Robert said, ripping the name tag from Daniel's shirt. The pin left a small hole in the fabric. "Clean out your locker. You have 5 minutes." That's when I heard it, the sound every parent dreads. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Emergency pattern. His face went white. "My daughter." "You're not on the clock anymore, Moore." "That's not my problem." I watched Daniel choose. 5 seconds that felt like 5 years. His daughter or his dignity. His child or his pride. He chose what any good parent would choose. He ran. The door slammed behind him, bells jingling with cruel irony. Robert turned to the remaining staff with a satisfied smirk, straightening his tie like he'd just won something important. "Let that be a lesson," he announced to the room. Nobody is irreplaceable. He was wrong about that, but he had no idea how wrong he was about to be. "I need to tell you something before we go any further. My name is Margaret Rose Calloway, though nobody in that cafe knew it. 63 years old, widow for 8 years, and the owner of Calloway & Co., a small chain of 6 establishments across the Pacific Northwest, including the cafe where Daniel Moore had just lost everything. But that morning, watching that good man run into the rain to reach his child, nobody recognized me. Not Robert, not the staff, not the customers filming the whole thing on their phones like it was entertainment. I was invisible. And sometimes, invisibility is the most powerful thing a woman can possess. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how I got here. You need to know why that moment, watching Daniel Moore choose his daughter over his paycheck, shattered something inside my chest I thought had calcified years ago. You need to know about the night I almost died on Highway 9. The night a stranger saved my life and asked for nothing in return. The night that changed everything. 6 weeks earlier. November 2nd. The rain that night didn't fall. It attacked. The kind of Pacific Northwest storm that turns highways into rivers and windshield wipers into prayers. I was driving back from Seattle, where I'd spent 14 hours in a conference room full of lawyers discussing estate planning. Estate planning. Such a cold phrase for deciding what happens to your life after you're gone. My husband, Thomas, died 8 years ago. Massive coronary at 64. Right in the middle of telling me a joke I can't remember anymore. One moment he was laughing. The next moment, I was a widow. That's how fast life takes everything. We never had children, not by choice, by biology, by the cruel mathematics of miscarriage and failed adoption, and eventually, the quiet acceptance that some women aren't meant to be mothers. Thomas said it didn't matter. He said I was enough. But after he died, enough felt like a lie. The business he'd built became mine. 6 locations, 43 employees. More money than I could spend in 2 lifetimes. And every single morning, I woke up in a house with 7 bedrooms and nobody to say good morning to. Wealth, I learned, is the world's most sophisticated form of loneliness. That night on Highway 9, I was thinking about Thomas. About the joke I couldn't remember. About how I'd spent 8 years maintaining his legacy instead of building a life. About how I'd become a photograph of myself, flat, still, unchanging. I didn't see the oil slick until I was already spinning. The car hydroplaned like a stone skipping across water. 1 rotation. 2. The world became headlights and rain, and the horrible understanding that I was about to die the same way Thomas did. Suddenly, without warning, in the middle of an unfinished thought. The car stopped 6 inches from the guardrail, steam rising from the hood like a soul leaving a body. I sat there, shaking, unable to move. My phone had flown somewhere into the darkness of the passenger side. The rain sounded like applause against the metal roof, and then, through the water-streaked window, I saw headlights approaching. They slowed, they stopped, and a man knocked on my window like he was knocking on heaven's door. His name was Daniel Moore, though I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that he was soaked to the bone, that his hands were shaking as badly as mine, and that when he asked, "Ma'am, are you hurt?" his voice carried the kind of genuine concern I hadn't heard in years. Not, "Are you okay?" Because clearly I wasn't. "Are you hurt?" The difference mattered. I don't think so," I managed. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Can you open the door?" I tried. The lock wouldn't budge. Something had jammed in the impact. "It's stuck," I said, and hated how small I sounded. Daniel didn't hesitate. He went back to his car, an old Honda with a missing hubcap, and returned with a crowbar, not to break the window, to carefully, methodically work the doorframe until the lock released. The door opened with a groan of wounded metal. "Let's get you out of here," he said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a garden party instead of a near-death experience. I took it. His hand was calloused. Working man's hands. The kind Thomas used to have before the business grew big enough to keep him behind a desk. "My car can wait," Daniel said firmly. "You can't. You're in shock. You need to get warm, and you need to sit somewhere that isn't falling apart." "I'm fine, really. Ma'am." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who understood that "I'm fine" is what we say when we're drowning. My daughter has a rule. She says if someone looks like they need help, you help them. No questions, no excuses, just help. So please, let me help you. What do you say to that? What do you say when a stranger quotes his child like she's a philosopher? I let him help me. Daniel's apartment was 17 minutes away, in a building that had seen better decades. 3rd floor, no elevator. He apologized 3 times for the stairs. The apartment itself was small, maybe 600 square feet, but it was clean, painfully clean. The kind of clean that comes from someone who doesn't have much but takes care of what they have. There were children's drawings on the refrigerator, held up by magnets shaped like letters, a bookshelf made from cinder blocks and planks, a couch that was probably older than I was, and photographs. So many photographs. A little girl with dark curls and her father's serious eyes, birthday parties, first day of school, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings, a whole life documented in drugstore frames. "That's Emma," Daniel said, following my gaze. He'd wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like lavender detergent. "She's 7. She's with her grandmother tonight, my ex-wife's mother, Emma's mom. She died when Emma was 2. The way he said it, flat, factual, like reading from a script he'd memorized, told me everything about how much it still hurt. "I'm so sorry," I said, and meant it. Me too. He handed me tea in a chipped mug that said, "World's okayest dad." "I should call you a tow truck. And probably a cab. Do you have family nearby?" Family. The word hung in the air like smoke. "No," I said quietly. "Not really. My husband passed away 8 years ago. No children. I have a sister in Salem, but we only see each other once a year, maybe. After Thomas died, I just pulled away from everyone. It's mostly just me." Daniel sat down across from me, cradling his own mug. For a moment, we were just 2 people who'd lost too much, sitting in a small apartment while the rain tried to wash the world away. "That must be hard," he said. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "That's terrible." Just acknowledgement, simple, honest. Some days are harder than others. I looked at the photographs again. "You're doing something remarkable, you know, raising her alone." "I'm doing my best." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Which some days means macaroni and cheese for dinner 3 nights in a row and hoping that counts as parenting. It counts. Does it?" The question came out raw, unfiltered. Because some mornings I wake up and I don't know if I'm a good father or just a man who hasn't failed yet. And there it was. The thing I recognized because I'd been asking myself the same question for 8 years. Am I living or just haven't stopped yet? We talked for 3 hours that night. About grief, about responsibility, about the weight of making every decision alone, about how the world expects you to be grateful for your survival while simultaneously judging every choice you make with it. He told me about working 2 jobs, about taking online classes at night after Emma went to bed, about wanting to give her more than survival, wanting to give her possibilities. I told him things I hadn't told anyone, about the house with 7 empty bedrooms, about maintaining a business I didn't care about because letting it fail felt like letting Thomas die twice, about how wealth had become a prison with very comfortable furniture. "You know what Emma told me last week?" Daniel said around midnight, refilling my tea. She said, "Daddy, I think money is like vegetables. You need some to be healthy, but having too much just means someone else doesn't have enough." I laughed. Actually laughed. 7 years old and already smarter than most economists. She gets it from her mother. The grief in his voice was clean, honest. Sarah was like that. She saw the world as something we were all responsible for fixing together. She'd have liked you. Would she? I didn't ask what he meant. Didn't ask why a stranger would say something so intimate. Sometimes the truth doesn't need questioning. Around 2 in the morning, exhaustion finally claimed me. Daniel insisted I take his bed. He'd sleep on the couch. When I protested, he smiled, a real smile this time, and said, "Emma's rule, remember? Just help. No excuses." I fell asleep in a stranger's bed, wrapped in a stranger's blanket, and for the first time in 8 years, I didn't dream about Thomas dying. I dreamed about living. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of rain that had gentled into something almost peaceful. Daniel was already up, dressed for work in a black polo shirt and slacks, the uniform for Callaway Cafe, though of course he didn't know I'd recognize it. "I called a tow truck," he said when he saw me stirring. "They'll get your car to Morrison's garage, best mechanic in the county. I also called you a cab. Should be here in about 20 minutes. You didn't have to do all that. I wanted to. He poured me coffee in a travel mug. Do you take cream, sugar? I have oat milk if you prefer. Black is perfect. He handed me the mug, then reached for his keys. I have to head to work. Morning shift starts at 6, but you're welcome to stay as long as you need. Just pull the door closed when you leave. It locks automatically. He was already halfway to the door when I found my voice. Daniel. He turned. Thank you, I said, and the words felt impossibly insufficient for what he'd given me. I mean it. Thank you. We're all just getting through it, ma'am. Might as well help each other along the way. And then he was gone. I sat in that small apartment for another 15 minutes, drinking coffee from a chipped mug, looking at photographs of a life built from love and loss and determination. On the counter, I found a notepad, the kind with a magnet on the back, probably from a pizza place. I wrote, Your daughter's rule is a good one. Thank you for following it. M. I didn't leave my name. I didn't leave my number. I left $500 under the note, enough to cover his trouble, his kindness, his time, and then I left, believing I'd never see Daniel Moore again. How wrong I was. That was 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks of thinking about that night, about the man who stopped, about the daughter with the rule, about how one moment of human decency had reminded me what it felt like to be seen. I'd spent those 6 weeks paying more attention to my businesses, actually walking through them instead of just reading reports, learning names, observing dynamics. That's how I ended up at the cafe that December morning. That's how I ended up watching Robert Hale destroy a good man for being 8 minutes late. That's how I ended up understanding, with perfect clarity, that the universe had given me a choice. I could stay invisible, or I could stand up. As Daniel's phone buzzed with that emergency pattern, as he chose his daughter over his job, as he ran into the rain for the second time in 6 weeks, I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and made 3 calls. The first was to my lawyer. The second was to my head of operations. The third was to someone Robert Hale would never see coming. Because here's what nobody tells you about being invisible. When you finally choose to be seen, you can bring the whole world crashing down. Have you ever watched someone abuse their power and wished you could do something about it? Have you ever been invisible and wondered what would happen if you suddenly weren't? Stay with me. Because what happens next? Nobody in that cafe was prepared for, especially not Robert Hale. Robert Hale was still smiling when I closed my phone. That's what I remember most about that moment. Not the rain hammering against the windows. Not the uncomfortable silence of customers pretending they hadn't just witnessed a man's dignity being stripped away. Not even the hole in Daniel's shirt where his name tag used to be. I remember Robert's smile. Self-satisfied, victorious. The smile of a man who believes the world works exactly the way he thinks it does. He was about to learn how wrong he was, but not yet. Because here's something I've learned in 73 years. Revenge is a dish best served with documentation, legal counsel, and a paper trail that could choke a horse. I wasn't just angry, I was strategic, and I'd been preparing for this moment longer than anyone knew. Let me take you back 3 weeks. December 2nd. My head of operations, Jennifer Park, sat across from me in my home office, a thick folder open between us. Jennifer was 49, Korean-American, sharper than a surgical knife and twice as precise. She'd been with Callaway & Co. for 12 years. If there was a problem in any of our locations, Jennifer found it before it became a crisis. Except this time, she'd found something else. Margaret, we need to talk about the downtown cafe, she said, and the way she said it made my coffee go cold. What about it? Jennifer pulled out a spreadsheet. Numbers in red. Lots of red. Revenue's down 18% over the last 6 months. Customer complaints up 43%. Employee turnover at 67%. That's double the industry average. And look at this. She slid another page across the desk. We've had 4 different health code violations in the past year. Minor ones. Nothing that shut us down, but still, 4. I studied the numbers. Thomas had taught me to read spreadsheets the way other people read novels. Every number told a story. Every percentage was a character. And this story was about corruption. "What's changed?" I asked. "Robert Hale became general manager 14 months ago." "On whose recommendation?" Jennifer hesitated. "Yours?" I felt that like a punch. "Explain. You signed off on it, July of last year, but—" She pulled out another document. I went back through the hiring files. The recommendation came from Gerald Finch. Gerald Finch, my former VP of operations, who'd retired to Florida 6 months ago with a pension generous enough to support 3 lifetimes. Gerald Finch, who I'd trusted completely. Gerald Finch, who I was starting to suspect had made a very expensive mistake. "What else?" I asked, because when numbers smell wrong, there's always more. Jennifer took a breath. "I think Robert's stealing from us. I can't prove it yet. He's too smart for that. But look at the inventory reports. We're ordering 30% more coffee beans than we're selling. Supply costs are up, but revenue is down. The math doesn't work unless someone's skimming." "How much?" "Conservatively, 40 to 50,000 over the past year." I sat back in my chair. $50,000 wasn't enough to hurt the company. We cleared that in a week across all locations. But it wasn't about the money. It was about what kind of man steals from the people who employ him. It was about what kind of man uses his position to abuse the people below him. It was about what kind of man Robert Hale actually was. "I want a full audit," I said. "Everything. Payroll, inventory, customer complaints, employee files. I want to know every decision he's made and every dollar he's touched." "And Jennifer?" "Yes." "Do it quietly. If he knows we're looking, he'll cover his tracks." Jennifer smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Consider it done." That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of Jennifer and her team digging through records like archaeologists excavating a crime scene. 3 weeks of late-night phone calls and encrypted emails and slowly building a case that would stand up in court if it came to that. And now, sitting in that cafe on December 23rd, watching Robert Hale bask in the glory of his own cruelty, I had everything I needed. Financial records showing systematic theft, employee testimonies documenting harassment, security footage proving he'd been charging customers for premium drinks and pocketing the difference. And now, recorded on at least 4 smartphones, video evidence of him publicly firing a good employee for being 8 minutes late due to a family emergency. The universe had handed me a gift wrapped in irony, but I couldn't move yet. Because Daniel's phone was still buzzing. Because somewhere in this city, a 7-year-old girl needed her father. Because justice could wait 5 more minutes, but a child's fear couldn't. So I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I made a decision that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with being human. I stood up, walked past Robert Hale without a word, pushed through the cafe door into the December rain, and I went after Daniel Moore. I found him 3 blocks away, standing in the rain outside a urgent care clinic. He was on his phone, his back to me, his shoulders shaking in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "I understand, Mrs. Chen. I do. But Emma's my daughter. I'm her father. I have legal custody. You can't just— I know you're scared, but she needs me. Please, please let me take her home." Something in his voice, the rawness, the desperation, made my chest ache. I approached slowly, careful not to startle him. "Daniel." He spun around, phone still pressed to his ear. His eyes went wide when he recognized me. Not as Margaret Calloway, owner of 6 establishments and destroyer of worlds. As the woman from the accident, the stranger he'd saved 6 weeks ago. I have to go," he said into the phone. "I'll call you back." He hung up. We stood there in the rain, 2 people connected by kindness and circumstance. "You," he said, and it wasn't quite a question. "Me." I pulled my coat tighter. "What happened? Is Emma okay? His voice cracked. She had an asthma attack at school. They called an ambulance. She's stable now, but she's scared and she's asking for me, and her grandmother won't let me take her home because you lost your job. He nodded, rain and maybe tears streaming down his face. Mrs. Chen thinks I'm unstable, that I can't provide for Emma, that maybe Emma should stay with her more permanently. The words came out like broken glass. She's filing for emergency custody. She's using this as evidence that I can't take care of my own daughter. And there it was. The real consequence of Robert Hale's cruelty. Not just a lost job, not just hurt pride, but a father at risk of losing his child because he'd chosen to help a stranger in the rain 6 weeks ago and arrived 8 minutes late because of traffic. You want to know what rage feels like? It feels like clarity. Cold, sharp, purposeful. Daniel, I said quietly. Do you trust me? He looked at me like I'd asked him to calculate quantum physics in his head. I don't even know your name. Margaret Calloway. I extended my hand, formal and deliberate. And I'm about to fix this, all of it. But I need you to trust me for about 2 hours. Can you do that? I don't understand. You will. But right now, Emma needs you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go into that clinic and tell Mrs. Chen that you have a new job, better position, better pay, better benefits. You're going to tell her that you start tomorrow and that your new employer will be providing a formal letter of employment and financial stability. But that's not... It will be. I pulled out my phone. By the time you walk through those doors, it will be true. I promise you that. He stared at me, really stared, like he was trying to understand if I was real or if grief and desperation had finally made him hallucinate guardian angels in expensive coats. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this? I thought about Thomas, about 8 years of living in a mausoleum of memories, about a night on Highway 9 when a stranger stopped his car and knocked on my window like he was knocking on heaven's door. Because 6 weeks ago, you showed me that good people still exist, I said. And I'll be damned if the world punishes you for it. I made 4 phone calls standing in that rain. Call 1, Jennifer Park. Jennifer, I need you to draft an employment contract. Daniel Moore, position, general manager, Callaway Cafe downtown location. Salary, $75,000 annually plus benefits, full medical, dental, vision, college tuition assistance. I need it ready in 1 hour. Margaret, what's happening? Justice. 1 hour, Jennifer. Consider it done. Call 2, my lawyer, Richard Morrison. Richard, I need a character reference letter, professional letterhead, stating that Daniel Moore has been offered a senior management position with Callaway & Co., and that his financial stability and employment status make him an excellent custodial parent. I need it in 45 minutes. Margaret, who is Daniel Moore? Someone who deserves better than what he's gotten. 45 minutes, Richard? I'll have it in 30. Call 3, Dr. Sarah Weinstein, my personal physician. Dr. Sarah, I need a favor. There's a little girl at Mercy Urgent Care, Emma Moore, 7 years old, asthma attack. I need you to call over there and make sure she has everything she needs. Best care, best treatment, and I need you to make sure her father can take her home tonight, whatever it takes. Margaret, I can't just... Dr. Sarah, you've been my doctor for 15 years. You've listened to me talk about how empty my life is at least 1,000 times. I'm asking you to help me fill it with something that matters, please. Silence. Then, give me the details. Call 4, Mrs. Chen. This one I had Jennifer track down for me. Patricia Chen, 68 years old, widow, retired school teacher, scared, grieving, trying to protect her granddaughter the only way she knew how. Mrs. Chen, my name is Margaret Calloway. You don't know me, but I know about your situation with Emma. I need you to listen very carefully." I spoke for 7 minutes. I told her about Daniel stopping on Highway 9, about the apartment with photographs covering every wall, about a man working 2 jobs and taking night classes and loving his daughter so fiercely it radiated off him like heat. I told her that Daniel wasn't unstable. He was exhausted, and there's a difference. "Mrs. Chen," I said gently, "I lost my husband 8 years ago. No children, no grandchildren. Do you know what I would give to have what you have, to have a granddaughter who needs me? But Emma doesn't need protection from her father. She needs her father. And you need to trust that your daughter chose a good man. Honor that choice, please." I heard her crying on the other end of the line. "He's a good boy," she whispered. "I know he is. I'm so scared. Sarah was my baby, my only child, and Emma is all I have left of her. I can't lose her too." "You won't. But you'll lose them both if you keep doing this. Let Daniel be her father, and let yourself be her grandmother. There's room for both." An hour and 47 minutes later, Daniel Moore walked out of that urgent care clinic holding his daughter's hand. Emma was small for 7. Dark curls like her father's, serious eyes that had seen too much loss too soon. She was wearing a hospital bracelet and carrying a stuffed rabbit that looked like it had survived several wars. When she saw me standing there, she tilted her head. "Daddy, who's that?" Daniel looked at me, and I saw something I'll never forget. Not gratitude, not relief, recognition. The recognition of one survivor seeing another. "Emma," he said quietly. "When this is the lady I told you about, the one from the accident." Emma's eyes went wide. "The one with the rule?" I blinked. "The rule?" "Daddy says you taught him that when someone needs help, you help them. No questions, no excuses." She held up her rabbit. "Mr. Hopscotch says that's a very good rule." I crouched down, ignoring the protest from my knees, until I was eye level with this small creature who'd almost lost her father today. "Mr. Hopscotch is very wise," I said seriously. "What else does he say?" "He says you look like the kind of lady who keeps promises." My throat went tight. "I am," I managed. "I'm exactly that kind of lady." Emma nodded, satisfied, and turned to her father. "Can we go home now? I want macaroni and cheese." Daniel laughed, a sound like breaking and healing at the same time, and scooped her up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. "Thank you," he said to me, over his daughter's head. "I don't know how I don't have words." "You don't need words," I said. "You need to take your daughter home, feed her macaroni and cheese, tuck her in, read her a story, be her father, and tomorrow morning you come to my office. We have a lot to discuss." "Your office." I handed him a business card. Simple, elegant, just my name and a phone number. He read it. Read it again. His face went through several expressions before settling on something between shock and disbelief. You own the cafe where you used to work?" "Yes," I smiled. "Among other things, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Daniel. Don't be late." "I won't. I promise. I'll never be late again." 8 minutes, Daniel." I put my hand on his arm. "You were 8 minutes late because you were being a good father. Don't you dare apologize for that. Not to me, not to anyone. Ever." I watched them walk away, father and daughter, exhausted and relieved, heading home through the December rain. And then I turned my attention back to the real problem. Robert Hale. My phone buzzed. "Jennifer. Audit complete. You need to see this. It's worse than we thought." I called her immediately. "Tell me." "Margaret, he's been stealing for longer than 14 months. I cross-referenced with Gerald's files. Robert's been skimming since he was assistant manager 3 years ago. Gerald either didn't notice or didn't care. We're looking at close to $200,000 over 3 years. $200,000. But that wasn't even the worst part. What else? I asked, because I could hear it in her voice. The harassment is systematic. I interviewed 7 former employees. All of them quit because of Robert. Verbal abuse, threats, sexual comments to female staff. He's been creating a hostile work environment for years, and nobody reported it because they were afraid. Yes. And Margaret, one of the women he harassed? She was 19, college student. She quit after he cornered her in the supply room. She never filed a complaint because he threatened to blacklist her in the industry. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about theft. This wasn't just about cruelty. This was about a predator who'd been allowed to operate unchecked because nobody had the power to stop him. Until now. Jennifer, here's what I need you to do. Contact every former employee. Offer to pay for counseling if they need it. Tell them we're investigating and that their testimonies will be confidential until they're ready to go public. Get their statements in writing. Already started. Contact a law firm that specializes in employment law. I want a case built that Robert can't lawyer his way out of. Done. And Jennifer, set up a meeting for tomorrow, 4 o'clock. I want every current employee at the downtown cafe in that room. Voluntary attendance, paid time. I want them to hear the truth from me. They'll be there. One more thing. Anything. I want you in my office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, before Daniel arrives. There's something we need to discuss about the future of this company. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my home office, Thomas's reading chair, looking out at the rain and thinking about the strange mathematics of justice. One good deed 6 weeks ago, one moment of kindness on a dark highway, one decision to stop when everyone else kept driving, and now a cascade of consequences that would change multiple lives. But it wasn't enough to just fire Robert Hale. Men like him land on their feet. They get new jobs. They find new victims. They learn to hide their cruelty better. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Morrison Investigations. Helen, it's Margaret Calloway. Helen Morrison, no relation to my lawyer Richard, was a private investigator who specialized in corporate malfeasance. She'd helped Thomas once, years ago, with a supplier who'd been cutting corners on safety. She was expensive, thorough, and absolutely relentless. Margaret, it's been a while. I need your help. I have an employee who's been stealing, harassing staff, and abusing his position. I have financial records and testimonies, but I need more. I need to know everything about him. Every job he's had, every reference he's faked, every skeleton in every closet. Can you do that? How fast do you need it? Yesterday, Helen laughed. I like you, Margaret. You don't waste time. Email me everything you have. I'll have a preliminary report by morning. Thank you. One question. Why now? Why is this particular employee worth going nuclear? I thought about Daniel in the rain, about Emma with her rabbit, about 8 years of living like a ghost in my own life. Because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by bad ones, I said, and because I finally have the courage to do something about it. At 3:47 a.m., my phone lit up with an email from Helen Morrison. Subject line, "You're going to want to read this immediately." I opened it. The first line made my blood run cold. Robert Hale isn't his real name. I read through the report once, twice, 3 times. By the time the sun started to rise on December 24th, Christmas Eve, I understood exactly who Robert Hale really was. And I understood that what I'd thought was a simple case of workplace theft and harassment was something so much darker I could barely breathe. Tomorrow, Daniel would come to my office. Tomorrow, I would offer him a job and a future. But first, I had to burn Robert Hale's world to the ground, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was living a complete lie? Have you ever had to choose between mercy and justice? Stay with me, because when I show you who Robert Hale really is, you're going to understand why some people don't deserve second chances. Robert Hale's real name was Robert Henry Stratton. He was 47 years old, born in Cleveland, Ohio, dropped out of college twice, married once, divorced within 18 months. No children on record, though Helen's report noted that his ex-wife had filed 3 separate restraining orders during their brief marriage. 3. The first for verbal abuse, the second for destroying her belongings during an argument, the third, the one that finally stuck, included police photographs of bruises on her arms that she claimed came from him, helping her understand why dinner was late. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was his employment history. 6 jobs in 12 years, manager positions, always in hospitality or retail, and every single one ended the same way, quietly, with non-disclosure agreements and sealed settlements. Helen had managed to track down 3 former employers willing to talk off the record. The pattern was identical. Charm offensive during hiring. Exemplary performance for the first few months. Then, slowly, the mask would slip. Inventory discrepancies, missing cash, employees who suddenly quit without notice, complaints that mysteriously disappeared from HR files, and always, young female employees who left abruptly and refused to give references. One former employer in Portland told Helen, "We paid him to leave, $20,000 and an NDA. It was cheaper than the lawsuit his assistant was threatening. She was 22. He was her boss. I'll let you fill in the blanks." Gerald Finch, my former VP who'd recommended Robert, had worked with him at a hotel chain in Sacramento 8 years ago. They'd been friends, drinking buddies. And when Gerald joined Callaway & Co., he'd brought Robert along like a souvenir from a vacation nobody wanted to remember. I sat in my office at 7:30 on Christmas Eve morning, reading through Helen's report for the 4th time, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. That was too simple. This was colder, sharper. This was the feeling of understanding that I'd been paying a predator to hunt in my own house for 3 years, and I hadn't even noticed because I'd been too busy maintaining a dead man's legacy to actually run the business. My phone buzzed. "Jennifer." "I'm downstairs. Coming up." "Good. Bring coffee." And Helen's report. "I need you to see this." Jennifer walked into my office 3 minutes later, 2 cups of coffee in hand, and the expression of someone who'd also been up all night. "I read it," she said before I could ask. "Helen sent me a copy. Margaret, this is worse than workplace harassment. This is criminal," I finished. "This is criminal, and it's been happening under our roof for 3 years. Jennifer sat down heavily. "The question is, what do we do about it? We fire him, obviously. But do we press charges? Do we go public? Because if we do, this becomes a media story. It becomes about how Callaway & Co. failed to properly vet an employee, how we created an environment where this could happen." She was right. That's exactly how it would be spun. Wealthy widow fails to protect employees. Business owner more concerned with profits than people. The narrative practically wrote itself. "You know what Thomas would say?" I asked quietly. "What?" "He'd say that protecting the company's reputation isn't worth protecting a predator. He'd say that if we stay silent, we're complicit, and he'd be right." Jennifer nodded slowly. "So we burn it all down." "We burn it all down," I confirmed. "But carefully, strategically. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. Where's Robert this morning?" "Opening shift at the cafe. He's there now. Probably preening about yesterday." I checked my watch. 7:45. Daniel would be here at 10. The employee meeting was at 4, and somewhere between now and then, I had to dismantle a man's entire existence without giving him time to run. "Call Detective Lisa Martinez at Portland PD," I said. "She handled that embezzlement case for us 2 years ago. Tell her we need to speak with her this morning, urgently. Tell her it's about financial fraud, harassment, and possible assault. She'll want evidence. We have evidence. Helen's report, our audit, employee testimonies. We have everything except time. Because the moment Robert realizes we know, he'll disappear. Men like him always do. Jennifer was already dialing. What about Daniel? What about him? When he gets here at 10, Robert will still be working at the cafe. Daniel will see him. Hell, everyone will see Daniel coming here. Word will spread fast. Robert will know something's happening. She was right. In a staff of 15 people, secrets lasted about as long as ice cream in August. Then we move faster, I said. Call Daniel. Tell him to come in at 9 instead. We'll have him in and out before anyone at the cafe notices. And Jennifer? Yes? After you call Detective Martinez, call every employee who gave a testimony about Robert. Tell them what's happening. Tell them they're safe. Tell them that today we're going to do what should have been done 3 years ago. Jennifer smiled. It was a terrible smile, beautiful and fierce and absolutely without mercy. This is going to hurt him, isn't it? She asked. Yes. Good. The thing about justice is that it's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical. A series of phone calls and documents and careful decisions that add up to a single, devastating moment. By 8:30, Detective Martinez was on her way to my office. By 8:40, all 7 former employees had been contacted and briefed. By 8:50, my lawyer Richard had drafted a termination letter that was less a letter and more a legal nuclear device. And at 8:57, Daniel Moore walked through my office door, holding his daughter's hand. I hadn't expected Emma, but of course she was here. School was out for Christmas break. Mrs. Chen was probably still recovering from yesterday, and Daniel wasn't about to leave his daughter alone after an asthma attack. I'm so sorry, Daniel said immediately. The sitter canceled last minute, and I couldn't— Daniel, I held up my hand. It's fine. More than fine. Hello, Emma. Emma waved shyly, clutching Mr. Hopscotch to her chest. She was wearing a red dress with candy canes on it, Christmas Eve outfit. We have a children's lounge on the 3rd floor, Jennifer said smoothly. It was Thomas's idea. He wanted employees to be able to bring their kids to work if they needed to. There are books, toys, snacks. Emma, would you like to see it while your dad talks to Miss Calloway? Emma looked up at her father. Daniel nodded. It's okay, sweetheart. I'll be right here. You can come get me if you need anything. Okay, Daddy. She took Jennifer's hand with the easy trust of children who've been taught that most adults are safe. They left, and suddenly it was just me and Daniel in my office overlooking downtown Portland, the rain still falling like the world was trying to wash itself clean. Sit, I said gently. Please. Daniel sat. He was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, probably the only professional outfit he owned. The shirt was wrinkled. The shoes were worn, but his face was clean-shaven, and his eyes were clear, and he looked like a man who'd spent all night holding his daughter and thanking God she was safe. I don't know how to thank you for yesterday, he started. Then don't. What I did yesterday was correct an injustice. What I'm about to do today is offer you a job. They're not the same thing. I slid the contract across my desk. He picked it up with shaking hands. A general manager, he read aloud. $75,000 annually, full benefits, tuition assistance. Ms. Calloway, I don't understand. What don't you understand? I was a barista. I made coffee and cleaned tables and restocked supplies. I don't have management experience. I don't have a business degree. I'm not qualified for this. You worked 2 jobs while raising a daughter alone and taking night classes. You've been Employee of the Month 6 times. You have customer service commendations I could wallpaper this office with. And more importantly, you're the kind of man who stops on a dark highway to help a stranger. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. But, Daniel. I leaned forward. Do you know what makes a good manager? It's not a degree. It's not experience. It's the ability to see people as human beings instead of resources. To lead with empathy instead of fear. To understand that your job is to help people do their jobs better, not to make them afraid of losing them. You already do all of that naturally. Everything else can be taught. He stared at the contract like it might disappear if he blinked. The downtown cafe, he said slowly. That's where Robert Hale will not be working there anymore. In fact, Robert Hale will not be working anywhere in this city after today. I'm taking care of that as we speak. Daniel's head snapped up. What do you mean? I told him. Not everything. Some things were for the police and lawyers, but enough. The theft, the harassment, the pattern of abuse, the fake name and sealed settlements. With every word, Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to horror to something that looked like guilt. I worked with him for 3 years, he said quietly. I saw things, heard things, the way he talked to people, the way he made Lauren, one of our baristas, so uncomfortable she switched shifts to avoid him. I saw it all and I didn't say anything. I needed the job too much to risk it. That's not your fault. Isn't it? I watched him bully people and I stayed silent because I had rent to pay and a daughter to feed. What does that make me? Human, I said firmly. It makes you human, Daniel. You were a subordinate employee with no power in a system designed to protect people like Robert. The failure wasn't yours. It was mine. I'm the owner. I should have been paying attention. I should have created an environment where people felt safe reporting abuse. I didn't. That's on me, not you. So why give me this job? Why trust me with that kind of responsibility when I couldn't even stand up for my own coworkers? This was the question I'd been waiting for, the one that would tell me if Daniel Moore was really who I thought he was. Because yesterday, when you lost your job and your daughter needed you, you didn't think about revenge. You didn't think about anger. You thought about being a father. And tonight, sitting in my office learning about everything Robert did, your first instinct isn't to feel vindicated. It's to feel guilty that you didn't do more. That tells me you'll never become him. And that's exactly the kind of person I need running that cafe. Daniel's eyes were wet. He didn't wipe them. When do I start? He asked, his voice rough. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, just you, a set of keys, and an empty cafe. I want you to walk through it alone. Learn it, feel it, understand what it means to be responsible for a place. Then the day after, you start training. 4 weeks of intensive management education. You'll work with Jennifer, with me, with every department head in this company. By the end of January, you'll be ready. And the staff? The people who worked under Robert? They're going to think I only got this job because of yesterday. They're going to think it's charity. Let them think it. You'll prove otherwise within a week. I stood up. Daniel, I'm 63 years old. I've been running this business for 8 years and living like a ghost for just as long. Yesterday, watching you choose your daughter over your job, something broke open inside me. You reminded me what courage looks like. Now I'm asking you to be courageous again. Take this job. Do it well. Show those people what good leadership looks like. He stood too, contract in hand, and extended his other hand to shake mine. I won't let you down, he said. I know. What I didn't tell him was that by 4 o'clock today, when the staff meeting happened, they wouldn't think his promotion was charity. They'd think it was justice, because by then, everyone would know exactly who Robert Hale really was. Jennifer returned with Emma, who was carrying a stuffed penguin that definitely hadn't come with her. Someone made a new friend, Jennifer said, smiling. His name is Waddles, Emma announced. Ms., Jennifer said I could keep him. Jennifer is very generous, I said. Emma, did you know your daddy is going to be running the cafe now? Emma's eyes went wide. The one with the good hot chocolate, that's the one. Does that mean we get free hot chocolate? Daniel laughed, actually laughed. I don't think that's how it works, sweetie. It works exactly like that, I said. Employee benefit. Best hot chocolate in Portland, whenever you want it. Tell your daddy to make it extra marshmallows. Emma threw her arms around my waist in a hug I wasn't prepared for. Children's hugs are like that. Sudden, fierce, completely without self-consciousness. Thank you for helping my daddy, she whispered into my coat. I put my hand on her dark curls, feeling something crack and heal simultaneously in my chest. You're very welcome, sweetheart. They left 20 minutes later, Daniel holding the contract like it was made of glass, Emma chattering about waddles and hot chocolate, and whether Santa would bring her a bike this year. The moment the elevator doors closed, I turned to Jennifer. Is Detective Martinez here? Conference room B. She's been waiting. Good. Let's end this. Detective Lisa Martinez was 51, Chinese-American, and had the kind of eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She'd worked fraud and embezzlement for 23 years. She knew how to read people the way surgeons knew how to read X-rays. Margaret, she said, standing to shake my hand. Jennifer says you have a problem employee. I have a criminal employee, and I need your help making sure he doesn't disappear before he faces consequences. I laid it all out. Helen's report, the audit, the testimonies, the pattern of settlements and NDAs, the fake name. Lisa read through everything with the methodical attention of someone building a case in real time. This is enough for a warrant, she said finally. Financial fraud, identity fraud, possible assault. I'll need to interview your employees, examine your financial records, coordinate with precincts where his previous offenses occurred. Whatever you need. I'll need to bring him in for questioning. Today, ideally, before he knows we're coming. He's at the downtown cafe right now, opening shift. He thinks he's untouchable. Lisa smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. They always do. Right up until the moment they're not. I'll have officers there within the hour. We'll do it quietly. No scene, no drama. Just a polite request to come downtown for some questions. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to run. What about the employee meeting at 4? Cancel it or postpone it. Once we have him in custody, you can tell your staff whatever you want. But I don't want him tipped off before we pick him up. I thought about the 14 people still working under Robert's thumb, about Lauren, the barista, who'd switched shifts to avoid him, about every person who'd suffered in silence because they needed the paycheck more than they needed dignity. No, I said quietly. The meeting happens at 4 as planned. Your people can pick him up after. He's going to have one last shift where he thinks he won the game. And then we're going to show him exactly how wrong he is. Lisa raised an eyebrow. That's a risk. He could run. He won't. Men like Robert don't run until they understand they've lost. Right now. He thinks yesterday was a victory. He thinks he proved his power. Let him have that for 6 more hours. Because at 4 o'clock, in front of every person he's ever abused or intimidated or stolen from, he's going to watch that power evaporate. You want him to suffer. I want him to understand what he took from people. There's a difference. Lisa considered this, then nodded. 5 o'clock, then, my people will be outside the cafe at 4:45. The moment your meeting ends, we move in. But Margaret, if he runs, if he hurts someone, if anything goes wrong, it won't. I promise you that. What I didn't say was that I'd be at that meeting too, that I'd be watching Robert's face when the truth came out. That after 8 years of floating through life like a ghost, I was finally going to do something that mattered, even if it meant watching a man's world burn, especially if it meant that the cafe opened at 6. By noon, it was full of holiday shoppers seeking warmth and caffeine. Robert worked the floor like a general surveying conquered territory, barking orders, snapping at staff, smiling at customers with a charm that evaporated the moment they turned away. I watched from across the street, sitting in my car, seeing my business through different eyes. The cafe itself was beautiful. Thomas and I had designed it together 16 years ago. Exposed brick, warm lighting, comfortable furniture. It was meant to be a gathering place, a community hub, somewhere people felt welcome. Under Robert's management, it had become something else, a place where employees flinched when he approached, where customers sensed the tension even if they couldn't name it, where the warmth we'd built had been slowly frozen by fear. At 3:30, I went inside. Robert was behind the counter, counting the register. He looked up when the bell chimed, saw me, and his expression went carefully neutral. "Can I help you, ma'am?" He didn't recognize me. Why would he? I was just another elderly woman in a nice coat. "Coffee," I said pleasantly. "Black, medium." "Coming right up." I watched him make it. Efficient. Practiced. No wasted movement. He was good at his job, technically speaking. That made it worse somehow. "$4.50, he said, sliding the cup across the counter. I paid in exact change, took my coffee, sat in the same corner booth where I'd sat yesterday, and I waited. At 3:50, Jennifer arrived with a large folder. She sat across from me. "Staff is gathering in the back room," she said quietly. "Everyone's here except Robert. They know something's happening, but not what." "Good. Lisa's people. Parked 2 blocks away, ready to move at 5. Then let's do this." At 3:58, I stood up, walked to the counter, and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Robert Hale, I need to see you in the back room, now." He looked up, annoyed. "I'm working." "You're not anymore. Back room, now." Something in my voice made him pause, made him really look at me for the first time. "Do I know you?" "You're about to." I turned and walked toward the back room, not checking to see if he followed. He did. They always do. The back room was small. 14 employees, everyone who'd been scheduled today, sat in folding chairs arranged in a semicircle. They looked nervous, confused. Lauren, the barista, looked terrified. Robert walked in behind me, and I heard his sharp intake of breath when he saw the assembled group. "What is this?" he demanded. I closed the door, locked it, and then I turned to face him, and I let him see exactly who I was. "My name is Margaret Rose Calloway," I said clearly. "I own this cafe. I own all 6 Calloway locations, and you, Robert Henry Stratton, are fired." The room went silent. Robert's face cycled through expressions like someone shuffling cards. Confusion, recognition, fear, anger. "You can't." "I can. I am. But before you leave, these people deserve to know why." I opened Jennifer's folder, and I told them everything. The first page I pulled from the folder was the audit report, numbers in red. Columns of theft stretching back 3 years. "Robert Henry Stratton," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Also known as Robert Hale, age 47. Currently wanted for questioning in 3 separate jurisdictions for fraud, embezzlement, and harassment." Robert's face had gone white. "This is slander. You can't." "I can prove every word. $217,000 stolen from this company over 3 years. 16 formal complaints filed by employees that mysteriously disappeared from HR records. 3 non-disclosure agreements from previous employers totaling $65,000 in settlement payments. And that's just what we found in 4 weeks of investigation." I turned to face the staff. Lauren was crying silently. Marcus, one of the line cooks, had his hands clenched into fists. Everyone else looked like they were watching a building collapse in slow motion. "I owe all of you an apology," I said. "This happened on my watch. I wasn't paying attention. I trusted the wrong people. I let someone dangerous operate in a space that was supposed to be safe. That's my failure, and I'm sorry." "You don't know what you're talking about," Robert said, but his voice had lost its authority. He was backing toward the door. "These are lies. I have rights. I have—" "You have nothing," I said flatly. Jennifer, show them page 7. Jennifer pulled out the background check. Helen Morrison's meticulous work. Robert Henry Stratton graduated from Cleveland State with a degree in hospitality management, worked at 6 different establishments over 12 years, fired from 2, asked to resign from 3 others, left the 6th with a $20,000 settlement and an NDA after allegations of sexual harassment from a 22-year-old assistant manager. Lauren made a sound like she'd been punched. Every job, the same pattern, Jennifer continued. Charm during the interview, excellent performance reviews for the first 3 to 6 months, then the mask slips, inventory discrepancies, missing cash, employees who quit without notice, young women who leave the industry entirely. "I want a lawyer," Robert said. "You'll have one. The police are outside. They'll be happy to arrange that for you." I pulled out another page. But first, I want these people to understand exactly who they've been working for. I read from Helen's report, the ex-wife's restraining orders, the police photographs, the pattern of abuse that followed him from city to city like a shadow. With each revelation, Robert seemed to shrink. The authority he'd worn like armor was falling away, revealing something small and mean and desperately afraid underneath. "Lauren," I said gently, "do you want to tell him what he did to you? Or should I?" Lauren stood up slowly. She was 24 years old, blonde, barely 5 feet tall, the kind of young woman predators target because they think she won't fight back. She was shaking, but she stood. You cornered me in the supply room," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "6 months ago. You said if I wanted to keep my shifts, I should be nicer to you. You touched my arm. You stood too close. You made me feel like I was nothing. Like my body was just another thing you could take." "That's not what happened," Robert said, but there was no conviction in it. "You said I was too sensitive when I tried to switch shifts," Lauren continued, gaining strength. "You said I should learn to take a compliment. You made me afraid to come to work. I started having panic attacks in my car before every shift. I lost 15 pounds because I couldn't eat. I thought about quitting every single day, but I needed this job to pay for school." Marcus stood up next. "You called me stupid. Every day. In front of customers. You said people like me were lucky to have jobs at all because we weren't smart enough for anything better." Another barista, Jessica. "You stole my tips. I saw you. You thought I didn't notice, but I did. $20 here, $30 there. That's grocery money. That's gas money. You stole from someone making $12 an hour, and you didn't even need it." One by one, they stood. One by one, they spoke. The cook whose hours you cut when he asked for time off for his mother's funeral. The shift supervisor you humiliated for asking about overtime pay. The teenager you made cry on her first day because she didn't know how to work the espresso machine yet. Years of accumulated pain, years of swallowed anger, years of fear and degradation and small cruelties that add up to something unbearable. Robert had stopped trying to defend himself. He just stood there, surrounded by the people he'd brutalized, and maybe for the first time in his life, he had to actually look at what he'd done. "I have 14 written statements," I said quietly. 7 from former employees, 7 from current staff. Every single one details abuse, harassment, or theft. The police have copies. So does my legal team. So does the Department of Labor. "What do you want from me?" Robert asked, and his voice cracked. "Nothing. I don't want anything from you, but I want you to understand something." I stepped closer. "You thought you were untouchable. You thought that because you were charming and competent and good at your job, nobody would look too closely. You thought that because your victims were young or poor or scared, nobody would believe them. You were wrong." "I'll lose everything," he whispered. "Yes, you will. Your job, your reputation, possibly your freedom. You'll lose everything the same way you made these people feel like they'd lost everything." I turned to Jennifer. "Call Detective Martinez. Tell her we're ready." 2 minutes later, Detective Martinez walked through the door with two uniformed officers. "Robert Henry Stratton, I'm Detective Lisa Martinez, Portland Police Department. I need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft." She read him his rights while one officer handcuffed him. Robert didn't resist. As they led him past me toward the door, he stopped. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," he said quietly. "Yes, you did," I replied. "That's the problem. You meant every bit of it." They took him away. The door closed. Lauren started laughing, the kind of laughter that comes when tension breaks. "He's really gone." "He's really gone," I confirmed, "never coming back." I waited until they'd separated, until everyone was looking at me again. "The cafe is closed for the rest of today and tomorrow, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, paid time for everyone. Second, Daniel Moore is your new general manager. He starts December 26th. "Why him?" Marcus asked. Because he's a good man who understands what it means to struggle, because he'll treat you like human beings instead of resources." "What happens to us?" Lauren asked. "We testified against our boss." "You showed courage. That's not disloyalty. That's integrity." I handed out business cards. "My personal cell phone is on there. Call any time if you face any retaliation." "Why are you doing this?" someone asked. "Because silence protects predators. Because all of you deserve to see that speaking up matters. That power can be held accountable. You're not just employees. You're people who deserve to work in a place that respects you." They left slowly, processing, healing. That night, I called my sister Catherine. "Would it be okay if I came to Salem for Christmas? I know I've always said no, but this time I'd really like to say yes." "Margaret, are you sure? You haven't celebrated with us since Thomas died." "What changed?" "Everything," I said quietly. "Everything changed. I spent Christmas Day with Catherine's family, held my grandniece Sophie, ate too much food, remembered what family felt like." On the drive home, Daniel called. Emma got her bike. She's been riding it in circles in our living room for an hour. "Tell Emma that living room bikes are a time-honored tradition." "Margaret, what you did yesterday took real courage. It mattered to all of us." "Thank you for reminding me what good people look like. Merry Christmas, Daniel." At home, I made a decision. The next morning, I drove to the animal shelter where Thomas and I had volunteered before he died. "I'd like to volunteer," I said. "Whatever you need." She led me to Charlie, a gray-muzzled pit bull mix. "He's been here 8 months. Nobody wants senior dogs." I looked at Charlie. Charlie looked at me. Recognition. "Can I adopt him?" 2 hours later, I drove home with Charlie in the passenger seat. At home, he chose Thomas's reading chair. Of course he did. December 26th arrived clear and bright. At 6:30, I arrived at the cafe. Daniel was inside, standing in the middle of the empty space. "You're early," I said. "Couldn't sleep? Kept thinking about everything that could go wrong?" "Good. That means you care." I walked inside. "Show me what you see." Daniel looked around carefully. "The front display needs better lighting. The register system is old. The bathroom door sticks. The staff room is depressing. The menu board is cluttered. And the staff, they've been operating under fear so long they've forgotten how to take initiative. How do you fix that? Trust. You give them trust before they earn it. You make mistakes safe. You show them their ideas matter. Then you get out of their way and let them be excellent." "You're going to be fine," I said quietly. The staff began arriving at 7. By 7:15, everyone was gathered. "I know this is strange," Daniel said. 3 days ago, I was making lattes. Some of you are probably wondering if I'll turn into another Robert. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I will never make you afraid. I will never abuse my position. And I will never forget that I was exactly where you are 72 hours ago. I stepped forward with printed copies of the Employee Protection Initiative. This is our new policy framework. Direct reporting lines, anonymous complaint system, monthly one-on-ones with HR, retaliation protections. Starting today, all 6 Callaway cafes, company-wide. This is real, Marcus asked, reading through it. All of it. They talked for 20 minutes about improvements they wanted. Daniel listened to every word, took notes, asked questions. At 8 o'clock, the first customer walked in. At 8:15, the morning rush began. I watched Daniel make coffee alongside his staff. Watched Lauren smile without that haunted look. Watched Marcus joke without glancing over his shoulder. At 10 o'clock, Emma burst through the door. "Daddy!" Mrs. Chen followed, walking to where I sat. "Miss Callaway, I wanted to thank you for what you said about Daniel. You were right. I was so scared of losing Emma that I almost pushed them both away." "You don't have to choose between remembering Sarah and letting Daniel be a father," I said gently. "There's room for both." Mrs. Chen looked at Daniel and Emma laughing together. "She's happy. Yes. I want to help make that happen instead of making it harder." She walked to Daniel, said something quiet. They talked, and when she left, she looked lighter. At 3 o'clock, Jennifer arrived with contracts for Daniel. At 5 o'clock, the evening shift arrived. Daniel introduced himself, explained the changes, listened. At 6 o'clock, Daniel walked me to my car. "Why me?" "Really?" he asked. Because 8 years ago, my husband died and I forgot how to see people. And 6 weeks ago, you saw me as a person who needed help. You reminded me what that feels like, and I wanted to return the favor. I won't let you down. If you make mistakes, and you will, that's okay. Mistakes mean you're trying. The only failure is becoming someone who stops caring, and you'll never be that." I drove home feeling purpose for the first time in 8 years. That evening, Lauren called. Today was the first day in 6 months I didn't have a panic attack before my shift. I'm going back to school in January, psychology. I want to help people who've been through what I went through. I learned it from you, that speaking up doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. After we hung up, I let myself cry. Not sad tears. Tears of recognition that I'd finally done something that mattered. Emma sent me a video, her riding her bike, laughing, yelling, "Look, Daddy, no hands." Daniel's message, "She made me promise to send this to the nice lady who helped us. Thank you for giving us our life back." I texted back, "Tell Emma she's an excellent cyclist, and tell yourself that you gave your own life back. I just opened a door. You walked through it." The next morning, I sat across the street from the cafe and watched Daniel open. Watched the staff arrive. Watched the ordinary miracle of a business functioning with dignity and respect. Then I drove somewhere new, to the animal shelter. Later, at the cafe, Daniel and I sat in that corner booth, drinking coffee. "Thank you," I said, "for stopping that night." "Thank you," Daniel replied, "for stopping when it mattered most." We clinked coffee cups. And outside, the December sun kept shining, and people kept coming in from the cold, and somewhere a little girl was riding her bike, and somewhere a dog was sleeping in a dead man's chair, and somewhere 14 people were going to work without being afraid. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything? A decision that seemed small, but rippled outward in ways you never expected. This is what I learned. We're all just getting through it, struggling and surviving and hoping tomorrow will be kinder than today. And sometimes, the most revolutionary thing we can do is stop for someone on a dark highway, or give someone a second chance, or refuse to stay silent when we see injustice. Because kindness creates more kindness, justice creates more justice, and courage creates more courage. That's all any of us can do. Care when it's difficult. Help when it's inconvenient. Stand up when it's scary. If this story touched you, if you've ever been helped by a stranger or helped a stranger yourself, share it. Because stories like this remind us what's possible. They remind us that we're not alone. And if you're out there right now, struggling and scared and wondering if anyone sees you, I see you. We all see you. And it's going to be okay. Not immediately, not perfectly, but eventually. I promise. Thank you for listening.